Imagine standing on a bridge, one foot on weathered stone and the other on a flickering digital beam. You remember the tactile weight of a physical encyclopedia, yet you navigate the cloud as if it were second nature. This is the world of the Xennials. But why does this tiny slice of history, from 1977 to 1983, produce such a distinct psychological ache? Why do you feel like a universal translator, mediating between the cynicism of Gen X and the idealism of Millennials, yet find yourself speaking a language no one else quite understands? You possess the grit of the analog past and the speed of the digital future, but this duality often feels like a permanent state of exile. What if your feeling of not belonging isn't a flaw, but a byproduct of a unique neurological blueprint? Let's step into the silence between the clicks to discover the hidden truth of the generation that history almost forgot. Society loves neat little boxes. Sociologists constantly force us to choose a side. Either you are the cynical, self-reliant survivor of Generation X, or the tech-dependent, idealistic millennial. For those born between 1977 and 1983, being shoved into these predefined categories feels dismissive. The prevailing assumption is that this micro-generation is just a transitional anomaly. However, the truth is far more complex. According to the framework popularized by sociologist Dan Woodman at the University of Melbourne in 2017, Xennials experienced a historically unique form of technological disruption. You are the sole demographic to have an entirely analog childhood, relying on landlines and physical maps, coupled with a suddenly digital young adulthood. You had to adapt to the internet's explosive dawn precisely when your core psychological identity was solidifying. But here is the crucial detail most people miss. This unprecedented developmental split did not just change your daily habits. It fundamentally rewired your social brain. This biological and environmental collision forged three deeply complex psychological traits, and it is the second trait that explains why you constantly feel so profoundly exhausted. Let's break them down. But here is the crucial detail most people miss. You possess a remarkable social agility. In a single afternoon, you can effortlessly navigate a rigid, bottom-line meeting with a cynical Gen X boss and immediately pivot to comfort an anxious, purpose-driven millennial colleague experiencing an existential crisis. People naturally gravitate toward you for advice because you intuitively speak both the language of analog survival and digital sensitivity. However, the paradox of understanding everyone is that you often feel understood by no one. While society praises this adaptability as high emotional intelligence, psychology views it as a survival mechanism. Your cognitive flexibility was forced to develop prematurely as you bridged two entirely different generational ecosystems. You aren't just empathetic, you are psychologically bilingual. But does constantly translating the world for others leave you with the emotional bandwidth to decode your own needs? You might brush this off as normal workplace fatigue, but that is merely the surface layer. The real reason you feel so profoundly drained is tied to a hidden psychological conflict that is secretly hijacking your sense of time. The real reason you feel so profoundly drained is tied to a hidden psychological conflict. Have you ever felt a profound homesickness for a time you know you can never return to? You deeply crave the slow, quiet simplicity of your screen-free childhood, yet you are simultaneously paralyzed by the modern fear of missing out. FOMO. You long for analog silence, but instinctively reach for your smartphone the moment a room gets too quiet. Think of buying a vintage record player to practice mindfulness, only to immediately post an aesthetic photo of it on Instagram. This contradiction is not mere sentimentality. According to Dr. Christine Batcho's research on the psychology of nostalgia, this yearning acts as an unconscious coping mechanism. When the modern world accelerates too rapidly, your brain deploys nostalgia to anchor your core identity against the overwhelming tide of constant technological change. You seem perfectly adapted to this hyper-connected reality, but the truth hiding beneath this flawless, high-functioning facade is far more isolating. It leads us directly to the third trait, a silent struggle that most Xennials fight entirely alone. But the truth hiding beneath this flawless, high-functioning facade is far more isolating. It leads us directly to the third trait. Growing up as the classic latchkey kids, you learned early on to navigate the physical world alone, letting yourself in after school and solving problems without adult supervision. This Gen X survivalist mentality merged perfectly with the perfectionist pressures of the emerging internet age. Today, you can self-teach any new software, troubleshoot complex systems, and outwardly project an aura of total independence. But this extreme self-reliance is a double-edged sword. You have mastered every external tool, yet you have completely lost the ability to ask for help when facing emotional turmoil. You suffer in silence because your brain was wired to believe that vulnerability equals failure. It is a lonely paradox. You are the person everyone relies on, but you have no one to catch you when you fall. But why does such a strong, adaptable generation carry so many hidden psychological wounds? The answer goes far deeper than childhood habits. The true key lies within a critical window of your neurological development. But why does such a strong, adaptable generation carry so many hidden psychological wounds? The true key lies within. To understand why this micro-generation feels so perpetually displaced, we have to look beneath the surface of culture and dive directly into neuroscience. The root cause of the Xennial paradox lies in a biological phenomenon known as neuroplasticity, specifically how it collided with a critical window of human development. According to developmental psychology and the extensive research by Dr. Jean Twenge, 2017, on generational mental health shifts, your core identity and foundational neural pathways were established during an entirely analog childhood. Your brain originally learned to process dopamine slowly, through physical interactions, delayed gratification, and tactile problem-solving. However, right as your prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center for complex social behavior and decision-making, was finishing its development in your late teens and early 20s, the digital explosion occurred. This timing is everything. Unlike Generation X, whose brains were fully matured before the internet took over, and unlike Millennials, who were digitally pacified from childhood, you were forced to aggressively rewire your young adult brain to survive a radically new digital ecosystem. This forced bilingualism created a permanent neurodevelopmental lag. Your brain is essentially running modern, high-speed software on a deeply analog hardware foundation. This constant subconscious translation drains your cognitive reserves, leading to that chronic exhaustion you just can't seem to sleep off. You are the last surviving bridge between the physical and the virtual worlds. It is crucial, however, that we do not romanticize this generational limbo. Being the ultimate bridge is exhausting. If left unchecked, this constant internal tug-of-war can lead to severe chronic burnout and identity diffusion. Furthermore, it is important to remember that the Xennial experience is not a monolith. Your socioeconomic background, geography, and family dynamics heavily influence how you process this digital-analog divide. Please note that this analysis is an exploration of sociological psychology, not a clinical diagnosis or a replacement for professional therapy. If your sense of isolation feels overwhelming, reaching out to a mental health professional is the bravest, most grounded step you can take. You don't have to carry the weight of two worlds alone. So how does a generation caught in the middle finally find its footing? Let's bring all the pieces together. So how does a generation caught in the middle finally find its footing? Being a Xennial isn't about being lost. It is about being the vital anchor between two vastly different eras. You carry the irreplaceable quiet of the analog world and the rapid brilliance of the digital age. Your dual empathy and extreme self-reliance are tools, not chains. True belonging begins the exact moment you stop trying to shrink your complex identity into generational boxes that were never built for you. You don't have to be the world's universal translator anymore. It is time to translate your own needs. If you found a piece of yourself in this video or recognize someone you love in these traits, please share your story in the comments. We want to hear your unique voice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into human psychology. Stay curious and be kind to your mind.